Conflict transformation. Can't we all get along? Kenny Chesney has a neat country and western song on that. I thought of playing that for you, but we won't do it. I should have had Jeff sing it. Yeah. But I stand here today as a veterinary business consultant, coach, live in Boise, Idaho. But in a former life, I was a large animal veterinarian. I specialized only in dairy cows. If it wasn't black and white or small and brown, I didn't care about it. I started originally as a solo practitioner, worked out of my truck to start with, then moved uptown to downtown Wendell, the old liquor store, and did dairy production medicine out of an office. Hired a practice management coach, consultant, that had never worked with veterinarians before, but he helped me change my practice. And one of the things we decided to do was grow it. So I hired 2 associates. I'm right-clicking, but they told me it was on. Now it's on. Okay. Hired 2 associates. The first one was Paul, here in this picture. He's in our mastitis lab checking mastitis cultures, for any of you that wonder what that auger plate is. And a year later, hired Pat. We meshed together well. These were farm kids, graduated University of Missouri, and it was great. And I was going to the local college, and I was taking business classes and really getting on the bandwagon to eventually get an MBA several years later. But, I was taking business classes. I was a good boss. I was competent. I knew how to do this stuff. The first class I took was business communication, so I was a good communicator. I thought. Went on for a couple years. Things were good. Every Monday morning we had breakfast together and we talked about what was going to go on for the week and what was going on with clients and that kind of thing. Friday afternoons, we usually debriefed at the local tavern over a few beers and shoot some pool. Now that's good communication, right? Monday morning, Friday afternoon. About this time, too, a couple of years in with these associates, and we're really growing, we started talking to another local practice, dairy practice, about merging the practices. One day, Pat, second one I hired, came up to me and said, "Bill, if it wasn't for talking to John and Lori about joining their practice, I'd be gone today." It was a knife in the heart. I've been doing a good job, right? Where'd this come from? Undoubtedly, there was some conflict there. But I did, as a lot of good veterinarians do, I ignored it. I buried it. I said, everybody pays their dues, all those kind of things that just let it slide till it hit this point. And looking back, I realized both my associates plus my support staff, there was some severe conflict going on, and it came from me. As a leader, I needed to understand how to deal with conflict in a way that was not burying it and ignoring it. Conflict is natural. We all think, act, and feel in different ways. We're all individuals. And when we put people together that are different, they think different, they feel different, there's conflict. And I like this little diagram here. Red and blue, does that trigger any thoughts of what's going on? We could talk locally, but nationally or in the world, there's a lot of differences, and it's creating conflict. The disconnect is, what do we do with that? How do we deal with conflict? Conflict is good. It is really good. It just means that someone's needs are not being met, and oftentimes it's multiple people, either 2 or more people's needs are not being met. The solution is an effective communication process. Looking back, when I was a practice owner, undoubtedly I did not have a good communication process. There's a group of us here in VetPartners that over the last couple of years have come together, and we have been doing workshops at some of the large national meetings on how to create next stage veterinary practices, and looking especially at collaborative leadership and a lot of the things that we've been talking about over the past couple of days. And a number of those people, it's kind of a loose ungroup of us that come together and work together and do this. But one of the things that we use is a conflict process or a communication process dealing with conflict, and it's this book right here. It's written by Marshall Rosenberg. Marshall, there's a picture of him on the right. And what it says there, nonviolent communication, a language of life. A language of life. That's pretty important. And then in the little green and orange there, it says empathy, collaboration, authenticity, and freedom. I put there the lifespan of Marshall Rosenberg because I think that's important. He died 3 years ago at age 80. But how he originally got into dealing with communication and the breakdown in communication and conflict was as a PhD psychologist. He was hired to help mediate the public school desegregation in the 1960s. Therefore, calling it nonviolent communication. He went on to work in situations like between the Israelis and the Palestinians, warring African tribes. So he was working in very violent situations. He also worked in this country in the prison situation, inner city schools, with gangs, but he also worked with individuals or especially like with couples, marriages, just all different levels of the ways that he did. This book is the third edition. So this is not a flash in the pan process. He developed this over 50 years, and today still there's a whole network of certified people that are certified to use the nonviolent communication process. Along with this, I read a book recently by Brené Brown called Braving the Wilderness. And in it, she did an interview with a leadership professor from the Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern, Dr. Michelle Buck. And Michelle Buck says it's conflict transformation, not resolution. Resolution would be thinking that maybe you just need to go back to where you were. Transformation means creating something new, and that it could even be better than it was before. So that's why I call it conflict transformation, and it really does fit with what Marshall says. He says you do create something new. You don't just go back to where you were. The title's Nonviolent Communication. Some people don't like to use that term, so a lot use NVC. Just use the acronym. Marshall says we can also just call it compassionate communication. So I think in vet practices or in the business world, maybe compassionate communication would be better, or NVC. It's real easy. I just misspoke myself. It's real simple. It's a simple process. It's 4 steps. It is not easy, but it's simple. Observation, feelings, needs, and request. And I'll go through each one of those briefly. And what it takes is you learn by doing, trying it. But the first step, and to me the most important step, is this observation step. Concrete actions or behaviors that we observe, and then we will relate those or try and tell someone else what we are seeing, hearing, or remembering. But the important thing is it's done without judgment or evaluation. So it's just the facts. And on I remember, it's not, I remember 3 years ago on Friday night when you said to me No, I mean, it's current. It's what's going on today. What is the conflict that's here today? Then we would go on with feelings. And here's something that, we've been talking about, this emotion, especially earlier this morning, about emotions and feelings. Our emotions, or our feelings, are simply emotions or sensations. Sensations would be the physical sensation that we have. It's the pit in our stomach. It's a tenseness in our shoulders and neck. It's the rise in blood pressure. Those are physical manifestations that we can feel. But then usually what we're thinking of more, it's the emotion. It's, I feel angry. I feel scared. I feel overwhelmed. And that's how you would determine it of, I feel. And Jeff and I were talking, a lot of us don't even have the words to use for our feelings or our emotions. And so in this book, what Marshall has done, he has a list of words that are likely to feel when our needs are being met and likely to feel when our needs aren't being met. But it's important. We observe a concrete action or behavior, and then it elicits some kind of feeling in us. And there needs to be a pause here. You wouldn't just rush into this. You would think about it. What am I feeling? What are my emotions? And that's, I think, one of the problems of a lot of conflict. We jump right from observing something, we blow through feelings and go right to creating a big mess real quick. This is slower. It's a process. Then out of the feeling, you would identify the need that is connected to that feeling. And needs, values, desires, there's different words that could be used that are fairly similar. But it's, what would I need to make me feel better? What would I need to increase my well-being? So I'm angry, I need respect. I'm scared, I need safety. I'm overwhelmed, I need competence. So there again, you'd see this could take some time to determine. There's a feeling, and then what is the need, the true need that's connected with that. And a lot of times you get caught in that you're not being able to identify the real need. So it takes some time to use that. But I need. The fourth step, and this would only be done after you'd gone through these first three, and you may have kind of circled around in those for a little bit on the first three before you get to a request. And it's not a linear, just bing, 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 4 steps. It's not circular. It can be circuitous, of kind of go and weave around until you finally get to this request. But what am I going to request of the other person that would make my life better, that would increase my well-being? A couple of things. You've got to give them the space to answer. So they have the freedom, and we need to listen until we hear what their answer is. And they have the right of refusal. They can refuse our request. If not, it's a demand. And once you start demanding someone to take an action or to do a certain thing, then that will probably get their defensiveness up, and right quick, you will be in a fight. And when you get in a fight, then 2 things usually happen. It escalates into a bigger fight, or what else happens? Someone just acquiesces, gets quiet. This is the kind of employee that they quit. No one ever asked them why they quit, but it came out of a conflict. So it either escalates or it's shoved down under. So there's kind of two ways on this request that you would do. The one is request an action. Would you be willing to? Then you would give them time to answer that. And they have the right to refuse you, say, I can't do that. The other would be more on the feedback or the clarification. And this is a really important one. Would you be willing to tell me? An important phrase to use is, tell me more about that. Try and get to that point empathetically and compassionately. You want to understand where they're coming from. And what will happen concurrently with this, it's not just us doing this. The other person, we need to be helping them go through the same process at the same time, or at least as part of the same process. What are they observing? What did they observe? How are they feeling? What do they need? And what are they requesting of us? And what Marshall says, that if you go through this back and forth, give and take, really being empathetic, trying to understand where the other person is coming from, compassionately, compassion will manifest itself, and you will end up with a situation where everyone's needs are being met. And this sounds like, in a lot of situations, this might be impossible, but the documentation that Marshall has in violent areas of the world, bringing people that are trying to kill each other, and he could get them to this point that compassion manifests itself. As I look back, when I was a practice owner, I really could have used this process. I wish I would have known how about it and how to use it at the time. But what I can do now is use it in my life going forward.